The snow had been falling since before dawn, not heavy or loud, but quiet and patient like it had all the time in the world. Thin flakes drifted sideways across the open plains, settling into the deep ruts of the stage road and softening everything they touched. The land looked tired under it, as if it had stopped resisting winter and simply accepted what came. The stage stop stood alone in that wide white nothing. It was a crooked building made of dark wood and old stone, leaning just enough to show its age. The frost clung to the window panes, clouding them over like eyes that had long stopped watching. Above the door, a wooden sign hung from one rusted chain, knocking softly against the post whenever the wind leaned in a little harder. There were no horses tied out front, no lantern burned inside, no voices carried through the cold air. There was only the hush of snow and one woman standing beneath the overhang. She pulled her thin wool shawl tighter around her shoulders, though it did little good. It was not made for December, not for waiting in the open since morning. Her boots were soaked through, toes numb and aching, heels burning like they were on fire. Snow clung to the hem of her skirt where she had knelt earlier. Her knees pressed into the frozen ground while she begged at a locked door that would never open. Her name was Eleanor Finch. Though no one had spoken it aloud in days, she pressed her bare hands together, breath shaking between her palms as she stared down the empty road. Her eyes stayed fixed on it, as if watching hard enough might force something to appear. Every small sound made her flinch. The sign creaking, the wind moaning through the eaves, a distant crack of frozen branches somewhere she could not see. Each noise lifted her hope for half a second before letting it fall again. The stage was late. It had been late yesterday, too. She swallowed hard, her throat tight, her eyes burning, not just from the cold. He had promised her 2 mornings ago, before the light had fully come. He had kissed her knuckles with warm lips and a confident smile. He had said the weather would not stop him. He had said he would meet her here. He had said, "Wait for me," like it was something solid and safe, not a risk that could break her. Now the road lay empty, white and endless. A quiet sob slipped out of her before she could stop it. It sounded small and broken, like she was ashamed of it. She turned her face into her shawl, shoulders curling inward as she tried to make herself smaller against cold. She had nowhere else to go. Behind her, the stage stop was locked tight, its owner gone south weeks ago. Ahead of her stretched miles of frozen land, and beyond that, only more of the same. The cold was no longer just on her skin. It had settled deeper, pressing into her chest, into the small place where hope had been trying to survive. Her legs finally gave out. Eleanor sank down onto the step in front of the door, skirts soaking through as she sat. Tears spilled freely now, streaking hot against her wind-burnt cheeks before freezing at her lashes. She did not wipe them away. There was no one to see. No one was coming. She had waited as long as she could. That was when she heard it. At first, she thought it was only the wind shifting again. But this sound was different. It had rhythm, a low, steady crunch that did not belong to weather. Her breath caught as she listened harder. Eleanor lifted her head slowly, afraid to believe it. Out of the white distance, a dark shape moved, broad shoulders beneath a long coat. A horse pushing through the drifts like it had done this many times before. Like winter did not frighten it at all. The rider did not rush. He came on at an easy pace, reins loose in gloved hands, hat brim pulled low against the cold. Snow clung to his coat and his beard, frost outlining his jaw. His eyes were sharp and steady beneath the shadow. He reined in a few yards from the stage stop and took in the scene without a word. The empty road, the locked door, the woman hunched on the step, tears frozen on her lashes. He dismounted slowly, boots hitting the ground with a dull, solid sound. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The snow kept falling, quiet as breath. Then he stepped closer, his voice low and roughened by cold and distance. "Been waiting long?" Eleanor's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She shook her head once, then stopped herself. She did not know how to answer that. He did not push. Instead, he shrugged out of his heavy coat and draped it around her shoulders. It was warm and solid, smelling faintly of leather and wood smoke. She gasped softly at the sudden heat, her fingers clutching the fabric before she even realized she was doing it. He crouched in front of her, then lowered himself to her level instead of towering over her. His gaze was steady but gentle, like he had all the time she needed. "Hey," he said quietly, like the word itself was meant to hold her in place. "You don't have to hold it together anymore." Her breath hitched. Something inside her cracked open, not all at once, but enough that it hurt. The snow fell on uncaring and soft, and the world seemed to narrow to just the two of them. The cowboy leaned in slightly, close enough that only she could hear him, and whispered, "No more waiting." The words did not rush her. They settled in the cold space between them, heavy and deliberate, like a door finally closing on a long night. Eleanor did not cry harder. She cried quieter. Her shoulders trembled once, then stilled. She drew in a breath that reached a place the cold had not yet claimed. The man stayed where he was, one knee in the snow, forearm resting loose across it. He did not touch her again. He did not look away. He was simply there. "I thought," she said finally, her voice thin and scraped raw, "I thought I was forgotten." He shook his head slowly. "People forget things," he said. "Not like this." She looked at him, then really looked at the faint scar along his jaw, the lines at the corners of his eyes, the look of someone who had learned what could be endured by enduring it. "You came from the north," she murmured. He nodded. "Snow's worse that way." A pause followed. "You alone?" she asked. Another nod. Somehow that answer carried weight too. The wind slipped under the overhang, biting sharp. He shifted closer without thinking, blocking it with his body, one gloved hand adjusting the coat around her shoulders. "You can't stay here," he said gently. "That's not an order, just the truth." Her eyes drifted back to the road, habit pulling them there. "I'm supposed to be meeting someone." His jaw tightened, though his voice stayed calm. "You already did?" She swallowed. The thought scared her, comforted her. "What if he comes?" she asked. "What if I leave and he finally shows up?" The cowboy did not hesitate. "He won't." She turned back to him, fear flickering across her face. "You don't know that." "I do," he said quietly. "Men who make you wait in the cold don't ride through winter to find you." Silence settled again, thick but not cruel. Snow gathered along the edge of his hat. Her tears froze where they fell. Time felt slower, like it had decided to be kind for once. "What's your name?" she asked. He paused just a second too long. "Caleb Hold?" She nodded. "Eleanor?" He repeated it once, testing the sound. "Eleanor." It did not sound fragile when he said it. Caleb stood and offered her a hand, level with her, not pulling, not commanding. She took it. Her legs screamed as she rose, pins and needles racing through them. She swayed, and his grip tightened at once, steady and sure. "Easy," he murmured. His horse shifted behind him, snorting softly, breath steaming. Eleanor glanced at it with a flicker of fear. "He's gentle," Caleb said. "Smarter than most people." A small, surprised smile touched her lips. He helped her into the saddle with practiced care, then mounted behind her, leaving space while still shielding her from the worst of the wind. The coat wrapped around both of them now, his warmth seeping through layers she had not realized were so thin. As they turned away from the stage stop, Eleanor looked back once. The building stood just as it had before, crooked, empty, cold. Something loosened in her chest as it faded into the falling snow. They rode in silence for a long while. The only sounds were hooves, breath, and the soft whisper of snow beneath them. The world felt smaller, safer. "Where are we going?" she asked at last. Caleb's voice came near her ear, low and certain. "Somewhere warm," he said. Somewhere the waiting doesn't follow you. Eleanor closed her eyes, and for the first time in a long while, she let herself believe him. The cabin did not announce itself. It appeared slowly through the trees, as if it had been waiting to be noticed. Snow-heavy pines crowded close around it. Their branches bowed low, groaning softly in the wind. Smoke lifted from a stone chimney in a thin, steady line, stubborn against the cold. It was the kind of place that did not promise comfort, only shelter. But to Eleanor it looked like safety. Caleb swung down first, boots sinking deep into the snow. He reached up without a word, hands firm around her waist as he helped her down. Her legs nearly folded again, weak from cold and fear held too long. And he steadied her easily, as if he had expected it. "Careful," he said, already brushing snow from the cabin step with his boot. Inside, the air was dim and warm, lit by firelight that flickered against rough wooden walls. The smell hit her all at once. Smoke, pine, something clean and simple. The door closed behind them, shutting out the wind so suddenly that Eleanor felt her ears ring from the quiet. She stood just inside, unsure where to go or what to do with herself. Caleb set his rifle by the door, pulled off his gloves, and placed them near the hearth. "You can sit," he said, "or stand, or just breathe a minute." She chose the last. Her shoulders slowly lowered as the heat reached places she had forgotten could feel warm. The fire cracked softly, the sound wrapping around her ribs. Only then did she realize how hard she had been listening for danger. Caleb moved with calm purpose, pouring water into a kettle and setting it near the flames. "You hungry?" he asked. Her stomach answered before she could, twisting sharp and sudden. She nodded, embarrassed. He handed her a cup first. The water was warm, not hot, but it burned all the same, thawing something deep inside her. She cupped the cup with both hands like it might vanish if she did not. That was when she noticed her hands were shaking. Caleb noticed, too. He said nothing. He simply draped a thick wool blanket around her shoulders, heavier than the coat, rough and real. She sat near the fire, boots steaming, skirts still damp. He turned her boots away from the flames with careful hands, adjusting them like it mattered. "You've done this before," she murmured. "Winter teaches," he replied. They ate in quiet. Beans, bread, salted meat. Nothing fancy, but it filled the hollow places. When she finished, Eleanor stared into the fire, watching the flames bend and rise like they were breathing. "If I hadn't waited," she said softly, "I might have frozen." Caleb did not look at her. "If you hadn't waited," he said, "you wouldn't have learned who was worth riding through snow for." The words stayed with her. That night, the wind grew louder. It pressed against the cabin walls, searching for ways in. Eleanor lay on the narrow bed by the wall, staring up at the dark ceiling. Caleb took the chair by the fire, boots still on, rifle within reach. Neither of them slept much, but the waiting felt different now, less sharp. Sometime before dawn, the storm tightened. The wind found every crack, every seam, howling like it meant to be let inside. Snow piled fast against the walls, against the door, against the windows, until the world beyond blurred into white. Caleb was awake before the fire burned low. He fed it slowly, listening the way a man listens to something he knows too well. The cabin answered with small sounds, with shifting, roof settling under new weight. Eleanor stirred. She sat up, hair loose around her shoulders, eyes still heavy with sleep. "For a moment," she said quietly, "I forgot where I was." Caleb glanced back. "That's a good sign." Outside, the storm erased all sense of direction. Pines bent low, branches heavy. The road they had ridden was gone, swallowed whole. "We're snowed in," Eleanor said. "For a day," Caleb replied. "Maybe two." She nodded. No panic came, just acceptance. They spent the morning patching a draft along the south wall. Eleanor held nails past tools, and learned the quiet language of work without needing many words. By midday, the wind slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. She flinched at the sound. "Storm like this sounds worse than it is," Caleb said. "Mostly noise." She looked at him. "That's what he used to say, too." Caleb stilled. "The man you were waiting for?" She nodded. Thomas saying the name felt strange now, like something she had outgrown. He said winter was just noise. That patience was all it took. Caleb leaned back against the table, studying her. "And when did he leave you waiting?" She did not answer right away. "The fire popped every time it mattered," she said at last. "That night, the storm worsened. The cabin felt smaller, the space between them shrinking without either of them moving." Eleanor sat near the hearth, sewing a tear in her skirt with thread Caleb found tucked away. Her fingers were steady. "You don't talk much about her," she said quietly. "There's not much to say," Caleb replied. "She died." No, his voice was flat. "She left in winter. Promised she'd come back in spring." Eleanor met his eyes. "Did she?" He shook his head. "I waited 2 winters." "I don't want to be waited for," Eleanor said after a moment. "I want to be chosen." Caleb swallowed. "You already are." Late that night, a sharp crack cut through the wind. Caleb was on his feet. In an instant, another sound followed, with splintering. He grabbed his rifle and moved to the door, silent and fast. The storm hid everything too well. A shadow shifted near the treeling. "Show yourself," Caleb called. A figure stumbled forward, hands raised. A man, half frozen, coat torn, eyes wild. Eleanor stepped into the doorway behind Caleb, breath catching. It was Thomas. "She's here," he rasped. "I know she is." He saw Eleanor then, relief and desperation flashing across his face. "There you are," he said. "I came back." Eleanor stepped forward. "No." The word cut clean through the storm. "I waited," Thomas said. "I did what I had to." "You left," Eleanor replied, "and winter showed me who you are." Thomas's eyes flicked to Caleb. "Who's he?" "The man who didn't," Caleb said. Silence fell, broken only by the wind. "You think this lasts?" Thomas scoffed weakly. "This is winter. It passes." "So do men who think waiting is love," Eleanor said. Caleb opened the door wider. "You can shelter till morning," he said. "Then you leave." Thomas hesitated, pride fighting survival. Then he staggered inside. The storm burned itself out before dawn. Morning came quiet and bright. Snow lay thick and untouched. Thomas ate, then left without another word, swallowed quickly by the white cabin. The cabin felt lighter after. They worked side by side, clearing the door and the path, the silence easy between them. By noon, the road beyond the trees showed again. "You could go on," Caleb said, "if you want." Eleanor looked at him. "And you?" "I stay." She smiled. "And I suppose I stay too." He stepped closer. "Winter comes back," he said. "Hard times too." "I know," she replied, "but I won't wait alone." He kissed her then, slow and certain. Outside, snow began to fall again, gentle this time. Morning settled over the land like a held breath, finally released. The storm had burned itself out sometime before dawn, leaving the world stunned into stillness. Snow lay thick and untouched around the cabin, smoothing sharp edges, quieting everything it covered. Even the trees stood straighter now, relieved of their burden, as if winter itself had decided to pause. Caleb stood by the window with a tin mug cooling in his hands. Pale light crept across the clearing, slow and careful. The cold outside still ruled, but it felt different now. Honest, clean, not reaching in claws anymore. Behind him, Eleanor stirred on the bed. She sat up, the blanket slipping from one shoulder, hair loose and tangled with sleep. For a moment she did not speak. She watched him there in the early light and felt the strange calm of a choice already made. Thomas groaned softly from the far wall and pushed himself upright. He looked worse in daylight. His face was hollow, eyes sunken. his pride worn as thin as his coat. He glanced between them like he hoped the night had softened something. It had not. Eleanor rose and crossed the room, pulling her boots on with steady hands. She stopped a few steps from Thomas. "You eat," she said. "Then you'll go," he scoffed weakly. "You always like giving orders." She met his gaze unflinching. "I learned what happens when I don't." Caleb set a bowl down near Thomas without comment. Bread, beans, water. Enough. Thomas ate in silence. Hunger and shame tangled in every movement. When he finished, he stood and pulled his coat tight. "So this is it," he said to Eleanor. "You trade waiting for hiding." "I traded waiting for choosing," she replied. "And I didn't hide. I survived." Thomas looked at Caleb, then really looked, saw the steadiness. Eleanor stood closer to him without thinking. Something like understanding flickered across his face. Or maybe just defeat, without another word. He opened the door and stepped into the cold. The sound of his boots faded quickly, swallowed by snow. Eleanor did not watch him leave. When the door closed, the cabin felt larger, somehow lighter. "You all right?" Caleb asked. She nodded, then shook her head, then laughed softly. "I will be." They spent the rest of the morning digging out the door and clearing the path. They worked side by side, breath rising in clouds, movements easy and unforced. No urgency now, no fear, just work and winter sunlight climbing higher. By noon, the road beyond the trees was visible again, still buried, but no longer lost. They stood together, hands resting on shovel handles, looking at it. "You could go on," Caleb said quietly, "now that it's passable." "And you?" Eleanor asked. "I stay." She smiled, certain. "Then I stay too." He turned to her. "I won't make promises I can't keep," he said. "Winter comes back. Hard times, too." "I know," she replied, "but I won't wait alone anymore." That night, they sat by the fire again, shoulders touching, watching flames move against the dark. Outside, the cold returned, but it no longer felt like an enemy, just a season doing what seasons do. Eleanor rested her head against Caleb's shoulder. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For riding up when I was ready to give up." He looked down at her, eyes reflecting firelight and something deeper. "No," he said. "Thank you for standing there long enough to be found." Outside, snow began to fall again, gentle this time, not as a warning, but as a promise that even in winter, something warm could take.